Gunnar Thompson with Oat Specialties, and I'm really excited today to talk to you about in-season development. To give you a little backstory on why I decided to talk today about this, I'm in a Facebook group, and there was a Little League coach who was asking about how he could get his pitchers to go longer into games, that they kept getting fatigued. And so it made me think about it in general. Can players really get better during the season? And how would they go about that? Most of the time, beforehand, if you would have asked me, I would have told you that that's for the off season, when you focus on developing and getting better and preparing your body for the rigors of the actual activity. But it got me thinking, there are some things that you can do in season, and especially right now, most of everyone is actually in the middle of the season. Some maybe at the beginning, some maybe towards the end, but everyone's in season pretty much right now. And so this is a great opportunity to kind of just take away a couple of nuggets that you think might work best for you. So I broke it down into 3 sections. I realized there is one thing on here that is not mentioned, mentality. Certainly people can develop the mental aspect of the game. That's just not something that I'm an expert on, and so I would refer to the experts on that. The 3 things that I came up with are endurance, stuff, and command. So starting over here with endurance, going back to his original question, how can pitchers go longer into games? Well, the first thing is if they focus on warm-up and cool-downs. A proper warm-up can help the body prepare for the sport, as well as the cool-downs can help them recover. If you're able to recover, you're able to bounce back, you're able to kind of generate more volume as you go, and so you can just keep building upon that. The warm-ups also keep you healthy, which basically allows the player to keep playing, keep being effective, and again, keep going longer and longer. I've written tubing, so sheath safety tubing is a great way to do this. It's a great way to activate not just the shoulders and the arms, but the full body as well. Recovery. So again, we talked about the warm-ups and cool-downs being effective for recovery, but recovery on its own is incredibly important. If you're able to bounce back and get back to the next day and actually start working towards the next start or the next game or whatever, that can really have a positive impact, especially when you start compounding it day after day and week after week, so that you can increase your volume from that perspective. And that's why I have the rocket wrap here. Look, it's super simple, something that you wrap on your arm, you do some movements with it, you take it off, and you just get this rush of blood to the area. It's just kind of a kickstarter for the recovery process. It's a great, easy tool that you can implement right away. Next, minimize workload elsewhere. So the reason I do this is usually the day after, especially, but sometimes if it's just periodically through the week, athletes, coaches will kind of prioritize the workload usually the day after. So they'll have them either go for long runs, or they'll have more sprints that day, or maybe they'll have a heavy lower body workout that day. The one thing I would say is you want to keep the entire workload in mind as a holistic approach, so that you can kind of make them more efficient for when they're actually playing in the game. So that might be backing off of the sprints a little bit. If they're running 20 sprints, maybe running them 15 so they're a little fresher. Maybe they hit a heavy lower body day, but maybe you pull back the volume a little bit so they're not as fatigued. They don't have as much muscle strain from that activity. So just find ways to kind of minimize some of the workload, but keep the intensity high so that they can keep performing at an elite level, but just make it to where they're a lot fresher for the games. The next thing is creating creative ways to stretch guys out. Look, I saw this at a high school one time where some of the coaches, especially early on in the season, they would have their pitchers go and throw 1 or 2 innings, and then they would immediately go to the bullpen and they would throw another 1 to 2 innings to a catcher with no hitter there, obviously. But it's a less stressful way that you can start stretching guys out. So even in season, even if you're in the middle of the season, maybe you're towards the end of the season and playoffs are right around the corner, and you need your guys to be able to go 4, 5, 6, 7 innings deep, you can start to pull them out as they fatigue and maybe have them throw an extra inning in the bullpen, again, in a less stressful, more manageable way that you can actually kind of stretch them out. The other way that I see that being used is the baseball training sock. It's a great tool. It's less stressful than actually throwing. You can get them on the bullpen and they can throw into a sock. So if you don't have the catchers available to catch them for those extended innings, they can still throw in the sock, still get the work in, and still just keep adding on to that volume incrementally so that you're not putting too much at one time. Stuff. So I broke this down even further into 3: velo, breaking ball, and changeups. So how do you develop velocity in season? Well, it's not going to be a weighted ball program. It's not going to be a heavy mass weightlifting program. It's not all that, okay? You kind of have the foundation built there. So now what you're trying to do is basically get the most out of what you already have. And that's why I said number 1 is arm health. And I have the baseball training sock here because, again, it's less stressful than actually throwing. It's a great way to keep your arm healthy during the season. It's a really good tool to use the day after throwing so that you can still get some throwing in, but it's, again, minimized as far as the stress levels. So arm health is priority number 1. You cannot throw very hard if you don't feel very good. So keep arm health priority number 1 no matter what. And then the second thing I have in here is don't disturb recovery. And what I mean by that is, are you eating well? Are you putting the proper nutrients into your body, the proper amount of carbs, fats, and proteins? Are you well hydrated? I know a lot of people talk about hydration, but how many of us actually drink enough water in the day? Not many. Sleep is another big factor, especially for college kids. I can't tell you the number of times that college kids go to bed 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they have to get up at like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock so they can get breakfast and then, go to class. So trying to get that 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that's going to dramatically help your body as well for recovery, and also allowing them to be more efficient for when it's time to actually throw the ball as hard as they can. Breaking balls. Throw more submaximally. This was something that really I learned from a high school coach by the name of Todd Foley. Whenever we first introduced the Spinaids, he came to us and told us, he's like, our guys can throw breaking balls every day. And, we're throwing them 30 or 40 times in a day, and they're getting better because they're able to actually feel it and throw it and actually get the feeling of the breaking balls. But they're throwing sub-maximally, so it's not putting a lot of stress or a lot of toll on the arm. And I thought that was a really great example of a way to train, especially in season, because you can throw 15, 20 extra curveballs, especially with something like a Spinaid or a YakkerAid now, that is very sub-maximal, very stress-free, nice, loose, and it just allows them to feel it coming off the hands, and so they can actually feel how it's going to take place and how it's going to shape during a game. So that's kind of the cues on the breaking ball. Change-ups, again, throw more in your side sessions, throw more when you're just playing catch. Maybe you long toss with your changeup. I was a big long tosser actually with my changeup. My changeup got better as I got a little bit older in high school and even into college. And a big part of that was I started just throwing it in with my long toss. It gave me a better feel for it because I was able to kind of get it more out in front, up in an air at an angle. But also it really gave me a true trajectory of my changeup as well. I threw a pronated changeup, so if I knew that it was tailing pretty good, I know that I was going to have some pretty good bite on the changeup whenever I got down to 60 foot 6 inches. The other thing that I take away is something I learned from Wes Johnson. They called changeup days. So back when he was at DBU, he would tell us that they would have changeup days where no matter what, if they did PFPs, if they just played catch, if they did long toss, whatever it was, they had to go with a changeup grip and throw it like a changeup. And so that just allowed the pitchers to become more comfortable with their grips and comfortable with their changeups. So I thought that was a great, effective way to do so. Again, tools. Our YakkerAid is a really great tool, especially if you have a pronated changeup, to be able to just constantly get that feel of what it's like getting inside the ball. And then our two-seam Spinaid is great for some of the guys that have some of those two-seam changeups, to just get that feeling off their hands. Again, submaximally, really just increasing the volume while not necessarily increasing the stress level. Next, command. So I think one of the things that we kind of get away from as we get into season is we stop throwing at targets. So again, I understand we get more into a catcher realm. I understand we get more into maybe another player, whether it be a first baseman, second baseman, whatever. You know, we're throwing to a glove. I don't care if it's a glove, but every throw should have a purpose. And we certainly believe that every throw should be to a target. And that's why our precision targets are so great. They're a small 10 by 10 target that you can put on any net, on any frame, any screen, and put them anywhere you want. And it just allows players to have a constant reference to throw to. The other thing too that we kind of see a lot is guys, as they get into some of their weighted ball throws and stuff like that, they're not throwing to a target whenever they're doing that. They're just throwing. Again, any throw really needs to be to a target, especially if you're going to hammer in on command. The next thing is adjust, and adjust in practice. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot of, at least in the high school level, I know a lot of guys had trouble with is if they're missing, you know, arm side high, and they just can't get it down, and they're not really changing their reference point. You know, they're not trying to bury it if they're missing arm side high, and they're not trying to bury it to see what it'll actually do. And that's just adjusting. Like, you know that if you threw a slider, I'm left-handed, if I threw a slider in the dirt and I was trying to get it over the plate for a strike, I need to aim a little higher and a little further outside in order for that thing to break across the plane. So that's just knowing how your pitches are actually moving and adjusting to that. You know, one great way that you can learn adjusting in season is really small incremental changes. So like a 4 ounce and a 6 ounce. Throwing those in with your regulation baseball is a great way, again, to be thrown at a target, but you're getting those little small changes so your body has to adjust slightly. And that teaches the body to adjust, and it also teaches the mind to adjust as well. And then last, get help from your catcher. You know, I can't tell you how many times I had great catchers in college, but I had a really good catcher that I had a good relationship in high school. And we were very good about, I was like, hey, where am I missing on this? And he would be like, you're missing high and arm side. You need something low and inside on the target. And he would go to flash a target, and then his hand, he would actually kind of put where he would want my reference point to be for that pitch. And so he was extremely helpful in that aspect. And I think that's just something that as pitchers, we maybe shy away from, or we just don't want to get them, you know, in more in their head, or whatever may be the case. But the catchers are there to help you. And so if they can try to start providing a little bit more of a reference or a starting point for your pitches, it can really take the thinking away from the pitcher themselves. So as you see here, it's very long-winded, but I hope there's a few things that you can kind of just take from here that, yeah, you can in fact develop while you're in season. And no, they may not be dramatic changes, but if it's something that you implement day in and day out over the course of a season, you're not going to be starting either backwards or starting from square one whenever you do get into your off season and your development period. You know, the worst thing is whenever guys are like, man, my velo decreased 3 or 4 miles an hour during the season. My arm health went to pot. Wasn't able to go very long because I kept fatiguing. And then, you know, my command, I couldn't get it over the white thing. That's the worst thing that can happen, especially when you want to go into a very productive off season. So at least take steps forward today to improve your game, and that way it'll thank you later on.